Hello everyone, just a quick word from your friendly editor/husband. For all of you who listen to So I'm Watching This Show and own an Android device, do me a favor. Go to the Google Play Store and download the Podcast Republic app. It's a fantastic app that allows you to get all of your favorite podcasts directly on your Android devices. I use the app and love it. I can search for the podcasts I want to listen to, select them as favorites, and have them all just a click away. Make sure you set So I'm Watching the Show as a favorite so you don't miss any new episodes. Again, the app is Podcast Republic, available on your Android device. Thanks!
I do. Okay, so again, not to build it up too much, but so the guy that I am currently seeing, his sister-in-law is best friends with Casey Musgrave's sister.
What?
Yeah.
You bitch!
I know. Yeah. He told me that the other day, and I was just like, oh, really? And immediately I was like, I cannot fucking wait to drop this bomb on Will and Kristen.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
oh my God.
So hopefully this goes well, because then that way you best believe I'm going to try to work this in, and so we can have some sort of meet cute with you guys and them and all of that stuff. So I'm working on it.
Let's get tickets to her. Let's get like VIP to her next show, like backstage passes to her next show.
I am thoroughly I'm in this just to help you guys out. So
yeah, and like if Harry Styles was there, since they seem to be everywhere together, that would be okay too.
I can only go so far, but I will do my best.
Hello, everybody. I am Will.
And I'm Kristen.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show. On today's episode, it's our 200th anniversary. Could you imagine if I didn't say spectacular?
That's what it's called in the calendar, is the 200th episode Moulin Rouge Spectacular.
I started to say extravaganza. Well, they don't say spectacular in the Broadway show, so...
They don't. I was very disappointed.
What?
Yeah.
Ew, I'm mad now.
I was very disappointed. In the first place, it's like easily 40 minutes longer than the movie, and
somehow covers less.
Yeah, and they didn't do as much... they didn't do all of the movie stuff, but they added other stuff.
If only you could see my face right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I am confusion.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, as you can hear, Rachel is here with us.
Hi.
Hey, it's me.
It's me.
The first time when you did that back during our Buffy episode, it sounded like Denise Richards from Drop Dead Gorgeous. It's me, Becky, and I brought your favorites.
Who are you?
Well, Kristen and I went to New York to see Moulin Rouge on Broadway, and when we realized that our 200th episode was coming up, we were like, let's talk about it, both the movie and the show, and we were like, you know who would be perfect to join us on this conversation?
Rachel!
Me!
It's me!
I would just like you to know that I have sparkly green eyeshadow and rhinestones on my face right now. I am fully prepared to talk about this sparkly show.
Okay.
Nice. And I am wearing my Moulin Rouge t-shirt from the Broadway show.
There we go.
Yep.
I haven't taken a shower today.
Well, neither have I, but I'm still wearing my t-shirt.
I'm a little bit sick, so I'm like consumptive.
Perfect. Tuberculosis chic. I love it.
So, okay, let's do what we typically do and start with the beginning. So, Kristen, what was your introduction to Moulin Rouge?
Well, I was good friends my last 2 years of high school when I lived in South Carolina with a girl named Emery, and she came over to my house one day and she was like, let's watch movies. And I was like, cool, what do you have in mind? And she was like, I think you should watch this movie. It's called Moulin Rouge. It's got Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman in it. And I was like, cool, I'm sold. And I watched it for the first time and I was like, that movie was a goddamn masterpiece. And so that was like maybe 2002 or early 2003, because I didn't see it in the theater. I had like no concept at the time. So we got it on video. And yeah, I loved it immediately. I was like, that was so much fun. And I was already a fan of the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet. So I was already in it. And we watched it and I was just blown away. I loved it.
Okay, so Rachel, what was your...
Well, my first introduction to Baz Luhrmann was Strictly Ballroom. And I loved that movie. I recently watched that movie, and that shit is bananas, by the way. But
I've never seen it.
I watched it after the fact. It's way bananas,
Yeah. And so I think my mom was the one that made me watch that. And then, of course, when Moulin Rouge came out, I also saw it at home. So she grabbed it and rented it and watched it and was immediately obsessed because it was like theater just on the movie scale. So everything was way too big, way too loud, way too bright, in the most absolutely perfect way. And I have been obsessed ever since. I honestly think it might be my favorite movie of all time.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's in my top 10, probably.
Yeah. I mean, well, because when I try to think of like my top 5, because I can never just name a top movie, I mean, it's always either 1 or 2.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just so pretty and just tacky in the best way. And I just love it. It just makes me feel good.
I remember I had to have seen a trailer, although I don't quite remember that. I remember it being excited for it. And the first thing that I really remember is the poster of her on the swing. Mm-hmm. It was like all blue and pale. And it was at Sam Goody. And I remember just thinking it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. And I like bought it from them. Or it's like, I think I did that thing where I like asked about it and they put my name on it. And so when they were cycling through their promotional stuff, they gave it to me.
Nice.
And I later went on to work at that Sam Goody as my first job. And it was one of the best times of my life. But Empire Records. And then I remember having a concept that it was a musical. And I remember the Green Fairy from the commercials because it was fantasy. So I was excited because she did the thing where she split into like 12. Yeah. And I was like all about it. And primarily for me, it was the music video. I was a teeny bopper at that point. And so it was the Lady Marmalade video. And I remember the making of, I remember the aesthetic. I remember it was so shocking and like gaudy.
Do you also remember Lil' Kim?
So good.
Like as a human person, do you remember her?
Have you seen her recently?
Yeah.
No. Is it bad? Is it bad news?
She doesn't look like the same person.
No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's sad.
That video had such a profound effect on me as a person in a way that sounds silly, but if you know me, it actually tracks. It's like, there's a point where, you know, my life as an artist is different because of Moulin Rouge. And
because of Christina Aguilera's eyeshadow specifically.
And hair, yeah. It like, something awoken inside of me. And so I went to the theater to go see it. I want to say with Kirsten. I don't quite remember who it was. And I actually remember not liking it. And I don't remember why. I think it was because I was so immediately thrown by what I perceived as the tonal shift of her dying.
Okay.
Because the movie started that way. And I think I was in denial. I was like, that's wrong. That can't... I was 15 and I was like, that can't be. And I remember being confused because, again, 15, I didn't realize that it was a jukebox musical. So I didn't, because I didn't know the songs. And so I thought they were original songs. And then randomly there was like a song that I knew. And I was like, well, this is strange. Why are they singing, you know, Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You in the middle of this beautiful love ballad?
Okay, I will go on that journey with you because I did not know that the one song was Elton John.
Yeah,
me neither.
For a really, really long time. I just was like, oh my God, this love song is so beautiful. And I just was like, oh my God, it's wonderful. And then like, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 or 7 years after that, I was like, hey, this is Elton John from the 70s.
Well, and then the clip of We Could Be Heroes, you know, that Peter, I don't know if it's a David Bowie or Peter, well, because Peter Gabriel covers it as well, and that's like my favorite version of that song. Yeah. But so I didn't realize that until, you know, I saw the first season of Stranger Things, and that song came on, and I was like, oh my God, it's everywhere, and I love it!
So, yeah, I think it was one of those things, because we've talked about a little bit for me personally, especially around that age for me. In some ways, I was like more advanced, and in some ways, I was less advanced. And so I think I wasn't fully prepared for a tragedy in something that looked. So I remember it making me feel bad.
Because it's so pretty and it's so colorful and so joyful, and then she still dies.
I didn't like it. And but I couldn't shake it. And so I was very committed to it in concept. And so when it came out on DVD, which I got like a full 2 weeks before it was released, because they put it out at the BJ's. And it was like, I remember being like, this doesn't come out for like a little while, but it was already in stock. And so I went up there and she was like trying to scan it and I didn't say anything. And it was like, it was like $22 or whatever. And so she just like keyed in something and gave it to me. So I remember being like feeling like I had gotten away with something.
I mean, you did.
Yeah, you really did.
And it was an extravagant DVD. It was a double disc. There were so many special features. They are really interesting and fun. Although, word to the wise, they're awful on the Blu-ray because they're filmed in like the, I don't know, like 280p or 4 whatever p.
No.
And so they put this horrible...
That's too bad.
It's like a proscenium around them. Yeah, it's like awful. It's like the definition of an eyesore. And convert the Lady Marmalade video, please, because it's still in like the 420 and
No, it's not.
It's so bad, but...
That's terrible.
So I think it was my second viewing of it when I finally was like, okay, I'm on board. And it's been a minute since I watched this.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think double-digit years, but it's been like 7 or 8 years since I watched this. And there was a part of me that was prepared to come back to this and not like it. I'm so serious because so many of my like friends, because I went to film school and so I had a lot of very serious, film school friends. And so many of them don't like it because it's so over the top. It's so much.
Ooh, that's the best part about it.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's why Will doesn't like it. He doesn't really love the Baz Luhrmann of it all, but like serious film people can kiss my ass.
Well, because
this movie is a masterpiece.
It's a theater. Because theater, if you're on stage, you have to be 10 times larger than you are in actual real life. Like serious movies, there's subtle nuance with an eye shift or like the way your body moves. But you do that on stage and the people in the cheap seats can't see that. So you have to amp it up. So this entire movie is amped up to a level 10, but everyone is so fully committed to being that big. And I just love it, because it almost makes me feel like I'm at home, just, growing up as a theater kid and doing all the stage stuff. So it's like, like watching rehearsal and being with my loud, over the top, amped up friends.
Well, I would also say that there are moments of very nuanced performance, especially from Nicole Kidman, because it is a movie. But I agree with you. Everything is dialed up to 11, and that is kind of the Baz Luhrmann way.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what's so cool about this movie is I think it does give you the best of both worlds, because sometimes theater... For me, sometimes theater can be too much. Like,
yes, absolutely.
I love it, and I love the experience of going, and I love being able to see new things and see people that I like on stage, but sometimes it's too much, and I feel I get that sort of secondhand embarrassment for the actors in theater, even though I know they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be. I'm like, you're going so big. Like, why are you doing that? And I get it that you're supposed to, and so that's I think what is perfect about this movie is Baz Luhrmann is so good at combining the two types of performance in the same movie in a way that doesn't make it feel disjointed.
Absolutely.
The thing for me is it's such a barrage of information, because you have the opening and you have his like melancholy like intro, and then from there was a boy, it's like you don't stop for 22 minutes, like you can't catch a breath, and it's a feat in and of itself. And I don't know how they filmed this. It's like, I can't imagine what the production schedule was like, because I feel like if an average movie has like, I don't know, 10 shots per minute, I feel like this has 90 shots per minute. Like, there is so much information to take in and to process, and it can be exhausting. And so there are people who don't like it, and I think that is correct for them. You know what I mean?
Because it's too breakneck, you mean?
Yeah, if you can't keep up with it, or if I don't imagine a lot of introverts like this movie.
Well,
sure,
I mean, I can remember the first time I watched this. Everything was like you were saying, everything was so breakneck. And I remember feeling really stressed out and very anxious until they're literally in the elephant. Because it was just so much, but it also was kind of like, is this what like being drunk feels like? Which, yes, well, Tiny Rachel, yes, this is exactly what being drunk is. But I also think that very much adds to the experience where you can really kind of relate to Christian. I mean, he was literally thrown into everything and then given a fuck ton of absinthe to go and do this thing. So I feel like it just kind of immerses you into the character, into the movie a little bit more. But I could see how that could be very, very jolting and very shocking to someone who's not prepared to do that.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the reasons why I hadn't watched it in so long, is because I was prepared to not like it. And, spoiler alert, I did. I still love it. And in my mid to late 20s, I matured a lot in my expectations from storytelling. Mm-hmm. And I find that love at first sight doesn't work for me anymore in a way that it did when I was a teenager. Yeah. And so I was prepared for this to not hold up even remotely. And I was shocked to find that it absolutely does. And I think the one reason is because we're introduced to him admitting that he has an obsession with love, but has never actually been in love. And I think if not for that caveat.
Yeah, there is that caveat, but I also think, because I am a lot more willing than you are to take love at first sight on its face. Like, when a movie is positing that characters fell in love at first sight, I feel like I'm a lot more willing to accept that as long as the performances are good. And Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman give excellent performances, and they have really good chemistry. And I feel like that goes a long way to letting you accept that they have fallen in love at first sight. And honestly, it's not really first sight for her. Mm-hmm. It's first sight for him, and she takes a minute. But by the end of the Elephant Love medley, she's like, yeah, whatever. I'm down.
Well, there's also like a myriad of montages that really help to sell the passage of time. Right. So it's like, even if I were to take issue with the at first sight part, you have more than enough, like, reason to believe this. Yeah. And that's the stuff that I'm talking about where I'm like, what was this production schedule like? Because there are so many shots in this movie.
Mm-hmm. I noticed last night when I was watching it, he says that this took place in the summer of 1899. And then by the end of the movie, it's snowing outside. So it shows, like you were saying, it does show the passage of time. So it kind of, for me, that kind of justifies the relationship a little bit more, because at least it's not like 5 days. You know what I mean? Like time did pass at least.
Mm-hmm. I agree that the chemistry is so good. And it was a little hurtful to me watching this now, realizing that I'm their age, because I was 15.
Really? Oh, God.
Yeah, they're a little bit older, I think, but it's like I was 15 when I first watched this. And I want to talk about the Broadway show. I was really, really, really planning on back-ending, like backloading that. Uh-huh. But I was gonna, because we saw Aaron Tveit, who I'm a huge fan of Aaron Tveit in. Yeah. And I thought he was great in it, but also it like allowed me to appreciate how good Ewan McGregor is.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I think I took it for granted because he's our base point.
Sure.
Like everything is like a chemical reaction to him. It's like it's like happening around him. So I never really considered him as a character and as a performance and stuff. And he also just like couldn't be dreamier. And
no, this is the absolute height of Ewan McGregor.
Peak. Yes, this is peak
Ewan McGregor handsomeness. Yes. This and then like almost immediately, I guess it was a couple years, but this and then a few years later with Down with Love, the hottest Ewan McGregors both.
Oh, yeah.
Hands down.
And I don't think I ever appreciated how strong his vocals were.
So good. So good.
I also wanted to state that this has got to be the warmest that Nicole Kidman has ever been.
Oh, I 100% agree with you on that.
Because she's...
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kristen.
No, I agree with you. I mean, she's a
bit of an ice queen.
She is very icy and blonde and tall and aloof and everything. So yeah, I mean, I think you're right. And to go back to the Broadway and comparing Ewan McGregor to Aaron Tveit it feels like I'm being mean, because I really enjoyed Aaron Tveit and I thought he was very good, and he is equally handsome and equally at the most handsome part of his life, I would imagine, so far. But there just is something that is more appealing to me about Ewan McGregor and his voice.
Well, I think that, I mean, without having seen, oh my God, I just lost his name. What is his name?
Aaron Tveit.
There, thank you. Without having seen that performance, but I've seen him in other things, I just feel like Ewan McGregor brought such an earnestness to this character.
Oh, well, lack of earnestness was not Aaron Tveit's
No, okay. Well, then never mind. I concede. So sorry. Please keep going.
It was so interesting to me because, and I think that's one of the things where what I was mentioning about preferring the medium of film and television. I don't know what it is, because like I said, I love seeing theater shows, but like it felt like there was something lacking in the performances of the Broadway show. And I don't know if it's because they maybe just had not as good chemistry, or their voices were certainly not matched to each other like Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman's are, because Karen Olivo, who played Satine, is like a fucking powerhouse.
Did the stage show seem more performative? Maybe is that where the difference is? Where the film seems more lived in, I guess? Or it seems a little bit more intimate?
That's absolutely it. And
intimate, for sure, is a good word for it.
I don't think that they were paired properly, because he has such a brilliant, but it's like a pop vocal. Mm-hmm. And she's Broadway.
Yeah, she is like a Kristen Chenoweth caliber.
She she consumed him a lot in ways that it was yeah. Like I said, I was going to get to it, but I wanted to focus on the movie first, because I mean, not everybody has the opportunity to go to Broadway, and so it's like I don't want to be like, I don't know what they're talking about.
Well, sure. I mean, the soundtrack is on Spotify if anybody wants to listen to it.
I hate listening to like Broadway soundtracks.
Really?
Oh yeah, the only exception I think is Wicked, but I still had to like force myself. I'm the like least theater person ever. It's very odd.
Back to Nicole Kidman, I remember, because also we actually just mentioned this, Rachel, because we were talking about Lord of the Rings earlier, but it was like this was a really sort of pivotal time for the film industry, because things were changing and being reborn, because it was like in 2000 and 2001, we got X-Men, we got Moulin Rouge, we got Lord of the Rings, we got Harry Potter, Chicago came out, and so it was like suddenly superhero, fantasy, and musicals were a viable genre again, in a way that they had died a pretty hard death in the 70s and 80s. And this was the first big movie musical in a while. I think Oliver won the Oscar in the 70s?
Yeah.
And then there were a handful of like movies that had music in it, like Newsies, I think, and children's animated movies had some music in it. But even like we talked recently about The Little Mermaid, and it was like that was the first Disney animated film that was a musical in the sense that it had more than like 2 songs. Like it's a proper musical where the music furthers the story. And this was also, oh yeah, I already said that. I was going to say this was my introduction to the concept of a jukebox musical.
Yeah, me too.
And it really, it sets a high bar. It was a big movie. It was a relative hit. It wasn't like a smash hit, but it was nominated for Academy Awards. And I don't think I will ever get over the fact that Nicole Kidman didn't win for this.
I agree with you. I was going to say the exact same thing, specifically all of her physical comedy when Ewan McGregor first comes in the elephant and she thinks that they're trying to have sex and he thinks he's literally giving her a poetry reading and she is just like thrashing and moaning on the bed. That is hilarious.
But even before that, even like when he's like, I want to just get it over with. And the way she just drops, like...
And she's like, oh. Well, and the language, because it was, honestly, the parts of it were giving me kind of Down with Love vibes with the, like, sex comedy where it's like everything is an innuendo and also a mistake at the same time. And he's like, no, you can, I like to do it standing, but you can stay laid down. It's really quite long and I'd like you to be comfortable. And it's just like, it's hilarious. And her reactions and her physical comedy, because you said this is like the warmest Nicole Kidman ever is, and I totally agree with you. And I think a huge part of it is the physicality of the role and the way that she is so aggressively leaning into that physicality at every turn.
She's having fun. That's the most fun I've ever seen her have in any role.
And it's not common for female characters, especially female leads. Like, they're supposed to be beautiful and, you know, a goal. There's supposed to be something to be obtained. And usually that kind of antics is left to the John Leguizamos of the story. Right. And the fact that she gets to partake in so much of the, like, insanity of it all. I mean, there's a point, and again, I understand why the people who don't like this movie don't like it. There's a point in this where it is a live action cartoon. Like, it is a Looney Tune. It's so strange. And it's so... I don't know how something that was so at risk of completely going off the rails managed to not. I don't know. It's bizarre. I don't know where to go from there.
It's very... No, I mean, I agree with you. It's very impressive that, like... Because it feels... very similar to his Romeo and Juliet, to Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, in the way that, like, it is a very good and true story, but it's so bonkers in the execution that the execution of it is what feels like it's gonna go off the rails, and the fact that he manages to keep the train going the whole time is, I think, what's so impressive.
I actually turned on that version of Romeo and Juliet recently.
Yeah.
I hate Romeo and Juliet with the Fire of a Thousand Suns.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So I was like, well, you know, I haven't seen this in a while. And I realized I've never seen the whole thing. And I got about halfway through, and I will say this is probably my favorite version of the story, just because it's so different than literally everything else everyone has ever done.
And they're so good.
Oh my God, they are so good. But I will say, though, the Baz Luhrmann of it all actually was a little too much for me.
Really?
And, yeah, and which I thought was really interesting, because I figured, like, you know, because I love Moulin Rouge so much, I figured that this would be a slam dunk for me. And it really was just almost like too much, you know, where there's a very fine line between tacky and fabulous. And I think with Romeo and Juliet, it was just a little too tacky, where comparing it to this viewing of Moulin Rouge is so much more refined, and it's I don't know what it is about it, but it just seems so much more refined. And, you know, it's like the difference between satin and sateen, you know what I mean? With like the literal fabric. Like,
Romeo and Juliet is also not a musical.
True.
That's true.
And so I think the musical aspects lend themselves to the craziness. Like, you're more accepting of the like over the top.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Because even Great Gatsby is not a musical, but music plays such a pivotal part of the story.
Well, that's also even less, even less tacky, even more sumptuous and like elegant than this is.
I think Great Gatsby is borderline restrained coming from Baz Luhrmann.
Well, there's none of those little audio ticks, I guess what you want to say, like when
scenes aren't sped up randomly.
Well, sure, but specifically when Harold is like twirling around the Duke, it's like he's making the noises himself, where he's just going
yes,
and it's like hysterical, because it reminds me of it reminds me of two things. It reminds me of Parker Posey in Josie and the Pussycats. And then it reminds me of Kronk from The Emperor's New Groove, when he's like doing his own theme music. And
all the same year.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like it all reminds me of the same. It like they're all bedfellows in my mind.
We were talking about the music I love how they go to all the places. I love the dance routines. I love that they take everything so seriously. Because the Can Can is probably one of my favorite numbers and songs on the soundtrack. And it's Fatboy Slim. And there was a part for me revisiting it where I was like prepared to cringe. And I really didn't. And I don't know that I can say that it's timeless, but it just like all fashion has trends. Like there's good and bad fashion, and some things really feel of their time, but like true couture should be timeless.
Yeah.
Like even if you can tell where it was, like what era it was created in. And I think there's a lot of that in this movie where it's like, even though a lot of it smacks of like 2001, it's so expertly done that it.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing, though. I think having it set in 1899 does it quite a service as well, because like the music at the most, but even still, the only song in the whole movie that was from the year this came out was Lady Marmalade, and even that was an old song first. So it's like there wasn't a bunch of timely like A-teens music in this. It was all like classic love songs and stuff. Even like It Smells Like Teen Spirit, it was from the early 90s. Or the mid 90s. And so like none of the music was timely, maybe some of the arrangements, but like the dancing isn't very timely, the music's not very timely, and the fashion is Victorian.
I think The Smells Like Teen Spirit is so inspired, and I remember so many people being so butthurt, but I think it's like, I wish there was more of it in the movie.
Yeah. It's perfect. It's so perfect. It was one of my biggest disappointments that it wasn't in the Broadway show.
I see an opportunity now to talk about Kylie Minogue.
Okay. Let's do it. She
is the Green Fairy. That scene. It's also like, in a weird way, the movie's front-loaded. Like, so much of the famous stuff is from, like, the first 22 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
As I mentioned, the Green Fairy was one of my selling points. And I didn't know who Kylie Minogue was at this point, with the exception that I had just learned who she was, because Can't Get You Out of My Head was on the radio at this time.
Right.
I can't imagine you never not knowing who Kylie Minogue,
right? It's weird.
I don't like it. It weirds me out.
It's so much so that both the song and video for Can't Get You Out of My Head registers to me as a different person.
Oh, interesting.
She feels like my first impression of her with that song and video, where I have like such a sense of who she is in every other like capacity. But I loved the song, and I bought the CD because I did that at this point. I still do it. I buy music. But I listened to it. It was good. I liked it. And then I sort of like moved on with my life. And so then I saw the movie, and I obviously didn't recognize her. And this went a full year, and I had like watched the special features, and they talked about how that role was originally written for Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh.
It was like a like rock and roll style, like punk fairy. And Ozzy was interested, and then something happened that he wasn't able to do it. And at one point, Marilyn Manson was in talks, and they were having a meeting, and like 3 different people were like, we should see if Kylie Minogue will do this.
Yeah.
But they had these really thick Australian accents, so I thought they were saying Colleen on this. So even then, I didn't get a grasp on who she was. And so it was like a full year later, she was on TRL, and Carson Daly was like, the Green Fairy herself is here. And he was like, wow, they didn't have to do any special effects for you. You're that tiny. And I remember being like, she's not the Green Fairy. That's some Australian actress named Colleen. Like,
you literally are like, fuck you, Carson Daly. Who do you think you are?
It took me a while to come around, and my super fandom for her actually didn't hit until X. I mean, I liked her. It hit pretty quickly. Actually, it was I Believe in You. But we'll get into this for my birthday next year.
Yeah.
We're going to do a whole Kylie thing. But I also am livid that there is nowhere an actual studio recording of her singing The Sound of Music.
Yeah, that's too bad.
That is a major miss, guys.
Rodgers and Hammerstein, because it's not on the soundtrack, and Rodgers and Hammerstein are a little persnickety with how they handle their material, and they're very like they obviously let people use it because it's in stuff, but it's like they've allowed her to do it in concert, but it's not there's not a recording of it, and that just bums me out.
Didn't Ariana Grande isn't she not making like a single cent from
Thank You Next?
Yeah, no,
No,
not,
7 Rings.
Thank you. Yeah. Because she uses the favorite things. Like, I don't think she makes any money. I think she has, like, all the money goes to them.
Yeah, it does.
That's dumb.
They've earned it. I mean,
well, because it's the same with Gwen Stefani and Wind It Up. Right?
Yeah, they've earned it. So I'm not uber mad about it. And I mean, they let people, because frankly, Family Guy has used their songs a handful of times, and their stipulation is they weren't allowed to change it. It has to be straightforward. And they decided that Stewie singing I Have Confidence in Springtime was funny enough that they didn't need to add a joke to it. And so he's just in the dress with the hat and the suitcases. And so iconic. Her whole, the costume is iconic. I think the performance, and it's just so one and done. That's another thing when I was revisiting this movie, is I couldn't believe how much stuff that I have such visceral memories of. And then when I'm watching it in the movie, it's like bam and over. It's like there and over. And like,
a lot of it doesn't take any time at all.
Yeah. So do we want to talk about probably I don't think that this is any of our favorite moment, but I think it's probably easily all of our second favorite moment, and it's Roxanne.
Oh, yeah.
Am I correct in that assessment?
Yeah, yes. I was like, what are you about to say? Because it might be my favorite moment.
No.
But no, yeah, I agree. Yeah, Roxanne is way up there.
It's so good. There's no real reason for it. And that's interesting that, like, easily one of the strongest moments in the movie is sort of kind of self-indulgent that way.
I don't know. I think it is necessary.
You think it is?
Yeah. Because the whole movie is just like a series after series of like lampshaded mentions for what's about to happen.
Yeah, but it's like the focus on the Argentinian and Nenny Legs in the Air. It's like, because I love Nenny Legs in the Air.
Yeah, she's great.
I love her so much. Actress by the name of Caroline O'Connor, who I have seen. I saw her as Vilma Kelly in Chicago. Her look, her costume, her attitude. I just love that she's just this villain just plopped in there for no real reason. And then I think Roxanne does so much for her character. It's sort of, because it's an Apache dance, which is tricky. That's not something that, like, they don't do it on Dancing with the Stars, and for a reason.
Yeah. It's a very aggressive tango.
I remember watching it and being like, oh god, because it's so rapey, but in like
it's
a
violent,
sexy way. Well, that's what an Apache is, but it's like considering how they're all like the way the men are prowling around her, and it's like you just have this like, oh, she's in for more than she can handle, and she doesn't realize it yet.
Right.
And he's so good in it, like the Argentinian. It's almost, and this isn't an actual complaint or criticism on my part, but I do almost wish that the other characters had a little bit more. Like all of them.
Like the side characters, you mean?
Yeah. Like the Argentinian, and Toulouse has a decent amount, although it was played up in the Broadway show, and I actually didn't notice it until this viewing that I think it is in this movie that Toulouse is Toulouse is in love with Satine. What were you gonna say?
I just, like, they know each other. It's clear they know each other, but I have never read it like Toulouse was in love with her. Maybe she was like a muse, like an artistic muse, but I never read it in the movie that way, and it was very heavy-handed and not even heavy-handed, they just like outright stated. He was like, I'm in love with Satine.
I don't like that.
Well, I think the seeds are there in the movie, though.
I mean,
no, I'm with Kristen. I mean, I figured that was very much like an artist muse type of relationship. And I mean, and they all, are part of the bohemian community. So I mean, I don't like that.
That's the thing is, like, I can see it, but I also don't like it. So I'm just ignoring it.
Because there's a version where he could be in love with Christian. And it's like, sure. I would
believe that more.
His like weird, because it's not consistent through the whole movie, but it's like at 3 separate points in the movie, he's like somehow like omniscient, like he's like third person narrating what's happening. It's interesting. I like it. And maybe there isn't like an actual finite answer. Maybe it's just the theatrics that we're talking about, but I wasn't fully done with Roxanne. It just...
Well, I will say that watching it, you know, being a former dancer, I mean, you feel so much of it, and the way that they lean into each other, you can almost hear like the ligaments like snapping and stretching, but then because you can also hear the shoes moving, and it's quiet and loud, it's just all of it
so dramatic too.
It is. It's so heavy and just so rich, but also so bare bone, like the way that it's backlit. So oh my God, it's just so haunting, and I have literal chills right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like a lot what it does within the story, because on the one hand, the Argentinian is talking about what is happening to Christian with the jealousy and like like his being in love with a woman who sells her body and stuff. But on the other hand, it is a more literal punishment for Nini Legs in the Air for being a snitch.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's both of those things. Like, she is getting this attack dance on her because she's being a bitch about it. There's so many points in the movie where they literally, like, when they're doing Spectacular, and the Duke says, and in the end, should someone die? And they just, like, don't address it and move on. It's like, well, someone's definitely going to die.
Yeah.
And then when Christian and Satine are having their affair, and he comes up to her.
The veil is thin between.
Well, yeah. So when he comes up to her and he's like, will the secret lovers get together in the sitar player's humble abode scene? And it's just like, yeah, they're going to go meet at Christian's place later. And it's just like all of this stuff that's like, it's got two levels and also no levels at the same time. It's very all subtext and then no subtext.
Yeah.
Well, and also I kind of feel like they're kind of, by having this dance number, we don't actually have to stand there or like sit there and watch the Duke attack Satine.
Right.
So it's kind of like,
which we kind of see anyway a little, but
well, yeah, but I mean, but it's in flashes where it's like, you know, I know that I'm already like sending you all on this wild ass fucking ride. So I don't need, I'm not going to make you guys sit here and watch like a rape scene happen.
Like a legitimate assault. Yeah.
Yes. So it's like, we're getting it without getting it at the same time, which I mean, I can kind of appreciate, where taking a step back in a weird way.
And I mean, it ends with Nini on the ground, like, quote unquote dead. You know what I mean? And it's like, we're out of sequence a little bit here, but I do have to say that I think her line is so iconic, and the delivery of it, like why would the courtesan choose the penniless writer? Oops. I mean, sitar player. And and you just see on Richard's face, like, that he's an idiot, and he realizes that he's an idiot, and you have to admit, they kind of deserved it.
Oh yeah, they are not hiding it.
They're certainly not being subtle.
And the line, when they're having the big fight, and Christian yells she doesn't love you, it's like, even in this viewing last night, I was like,
oh no.
There's something about it that I love, and when Satine takes control, like complete control right there, it's so fascinating watching the balance of power with these people, because no one's ever really in control. Like,
yeah.
Oh man, I do want to talk about the insanity that is that finale, the Bollywood number.
It's amazing.
I mean, beyond.
I was so prepared to go back to it and have remembered it bigger and better than it was. Like, I was prepared to be like, oh, I remember this better when I was 15. And I was like, there's more than I remember. Like,
yes.
I don't know how they did that. I don't really have anything to say other than that it's stunning, and I would love to see something like that.
Yeah, I feel very similarly, where you already mentioned that you and I were talking about Lord of the Rings earlier. I feel very similarly about this and the effects and the scale of it that I do about Lord of the Rings, which is that because it's all real and practical, and like those are sets that they built that they're operating in, and there's like CGI flourishes, but nothing is like built in the computer. I think that's a huge part of it, where like they definitely didn't skimp on the budget for the sets, and I think that is what makes it and what makes it hold up, because that's why it's not disappointing when you're thinking about it from when you were 15 and you're watching it now when you're 34.
Mm-hmm.
It's just as impressive now as it was then because it's real and you can see it all on the stage, and it's not like just a green screen.
There's plenty of it that is digital. Pretty much anytime they're outside, that is green screen and digital and stuff. But what they did was they made sure to like go extra hard to make it look like it was made with turn of the century technology.
Yeah.
So it's like even the green fairy, they're talking about like her wings and the particles and the way that she's green. It looks like the double exposure photography and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was like they were making a point to make it look artificial from 100 years ago versus artificial in a state-of-the-art way.
Right.
And that really holds up and translated into a Blu-ray viewing on like a big HD TV that I was a little bit like, phew, you know what I mean? Like, but because I was a little astonished by how there's a scene where they're like on the balcony under the L'Amour sign, and it's like the doorway they're in is the only real thing in that shot, but it looked like a turn of the century watercolor. Like it just looked like a painting. And I love because this goes back to the stuff you're talking about, Rachel, with the theater of it, when they dance out of the elephant and into the skies of Paris, and it's like a soundstage, like an old-fashioned movie.
Yeah, and the way that, you know, their outfits glitter because it rained glitter down, but it fell just so, and the lights are hitting it in such a way that it just adds this whole just elevated element to it all. And just so good. It makes me so happy.
I think the end of it is stunning. It's so much because they like win and then lose and then win and then lose and then win and then like it happens like 6 times. But it's so joyous. It's so over the top. Like, I mean, borderline like angelic trumpets by the time like they're at the end where you can't fight the children of the revolution and stuff. And what do we think about the fact that she dies? Do we not like it, or is there no other way?
No, it's correct. If she lived, it would be so saccharine.
While I mean his wailing, to this day, anytime I need to think of something sad for whatever reason, I always picture that sound of Ewan McGregor wailing, just because it cuts me so deeply. And I think without having this ending, you're 100% correct, Kristen, where it would be too wrapped up, too sweet, too much, where this movie already is way too fucking much. And if we had that happy ending at the end, it would almost seem unfair to have a happy ending at the end.
Well, and I think that's something that Baz Luhrmann really leans into, is like nothing is 100% ever going to go the way you want. And I think with Romeo and Juliet, obviously that's one of the most melancholy source materials. And then with The Great Gatsby, that's also a very melancholy, Gatsby dies.
American melancholy, yeah.
Yeah, and then Daisy is just like a shithead, and it's all he has a really good handle on melancholy subject matter, and I think it would have been going against his instincts to have her live. Also, she had tuberculosis in the year 1900. We didn't have penicillin. She was going to die. You don't get better from that.
Also, I'll go ahead and argue that they did have the happy ending.
Well, sure, they were together in the end, and they sang Come What May and everything, and it was lovely, and then she immediately died. I mean, it's like, melancholy.
It does end on such a note, because, like, there's no encore. You know what I mean? Like, we don't cut to them in heaven, It's like, it ends in a very, the movie version of Into the Woods place, where you're kind of like, okay, let me think about this for a half hour on the way home. Yep. And I understand why I had that reaction when I was 15, and it's a part of me where it's like, I think even to this day, it fractures a little bit. Like, though I understand that that's the ending, from an emotional stance, I stop, it's like at the finale scene.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, I mean, I think that is the part of my brain that's different than the part of your brain that makes me really like the Pixar movies.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really like it that it makes me think for half an hour after. I really like the nuance. I really like the melancholy. I really like the crying.
I do like it, because melancholy is one of my favorite themes in something, but it just, I think it's not so much the sadness. I think it's more the breakneckiness.
I mean, for me, I mean, I can almost appreciate the breakneckiness of it because
breakneckness.
Yeah, there we go. Just because, I mean, that's how life is. I mean, you're going through bebopping your way through life, and then all of a sudden, shit, hits the literal fan. So, I just kind of like that, just, because that's just how shit goes sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So can you think if there was anything else that you wanted to touch on with the...
Can I just say just a little random part that for whatever reason, this is probably one of my favorite parts in the entire movie, when they are doing the medley, and they're doing like the vignettes or whatever, and they're on the picnic with the Duke, and the Duke says, "Look, my dear little frog," and then he prances after it, and then the next scene he's like stopping it to death and going when he did it. I guffaw every single time. I love it so much, and it's so stupid, but it's those little things throughout the movie that it just makes me love it so much, because everyone knows what they're there for, and they're fully committed, and it's just those small pieces like that.
Round of applause for Richard. It's Roxburgh or Roxborough?
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say the same thing. I think because he's the villain, he doesn't get the credit he deserves, and he is such a good part of this movie.
Oh,
and I found him so unappealing at like when I was a teenager, in a way that watching it actually this time,
he's deeply unappealing, but he's
watching it this time, I'm like, he's more handsome than I remember him being. Like the actor, well, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. He's not like a bridge troll, but he is a deeply unappealing human as the Duke, but it's just such an inspired performance where he's like, he's very dark and icky, but he's also like the beginning of the frog thing. And like every time he's trying to get Satine to come over for dinner, he's very like overtly friendly, and he's like, "Oh yes, but I've planned a lovely dinner for us." And it's just, I don't know, it's a very
it's a spoiled
interesting
rich
performance.
Boy,
yeah.
Well, and then when he sings, when he tries to participate when they're selling him spectacular,
yes.
Feeling,
honey.
Yeah, and he's just like, feeling inside, and then that little like wiggle thing he does with his face.
It's so smarmy and like
so
oily. It's awful but amazing. I love it.
I do have to say, the unsung hero of this entire production is Jim Broadbent.
Yes.
That's a performance that I did not appreciate when I was 15.
I love Jim Broadbent. He gives this role his all.
And it is also a tour de force.
Yeah.
Like, holy cow. The whole thing. I mean, the can again, because there's also they do the hunkadoodle or something. There's another dance.
Hunkadola.
Yeah, hunkadola in the deleted scenes and stuff. And it's like, it's so good.
I just want someone to call me Chickpea. Just in that way. Chickpea.
I like that he calls her Ducky, too.
He calls her Poppet, yeah.
Before we move on to the Broadway show, I did want to talk about how good Come What May is. Okay. Because it is, like, up there for me for romantic songs from movies. Like, it's up there with Once Upon a Dream and, I always forget the one from Tangled. What's it called? I See the Light. Yeah, oh god, it's so good. And the two of them singing it together, especially at the end, when Ewan McGregor just keeps hitting that note, it's amazing.
Well, and I am very somewhat embarrassed to share this, but I cannot tell you how many times I acted out My Life as a Music video in my car while singing One Day I'll Fly Away.
Oh my god, so good too.
Just so emo. Like, one day I'm going to fly away to New York City and no one will find me. You don't even appreciate me. Oh my god, so many times in my little green Nissan Sentra sitting in my driveway.
Classy.
Oh, so good. So yeah, when that popped up last night, I was like, ooh, that's so weird. It's so just visceral. Ugh.
So yes, we had the privilege and the pleasure of going to New York to see Moulin Rouge on Broadway. And
I am all kinds of jelly.
I'm very confident that Chris and I are in the exact same boat.
Yeah.
It was incredible. It was such an awesome experience. I'm so glad that we did it. And the entire production was amazing.
It was very impressive. It was like, there was more than I thought there was going to be.
And also, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing. It was very good. It was a very immersive production because they had like tables in between like a catwalk kind of thing that came out from the stage. So there were dancers like in the midst of the audience kind of. And we were in the mezzanine, so we were not quite as in the mix, thankfully. But it was very good. The sets were amazing. The costumes were great. It was all very good. I mean, the songs that they added were excellent too, but it is that thing where theater is just not my preferred medium, where like I really liked it. I'm glad we saw it. It made me very happy, but I guess maybe specifically musical theater, because I think dramatic productions more.
Well, I mean, I was always in the camp of I liked dramatic pieces or straight plays rather than musical theater. So I have a feeling I probably would feel the same had I seen it.
There's just nothing that it did that the movie didn't do better is the issue.
Well, sure. And I mean, some of that is budget. Some of that is the size of the stage, which like the stage that we saw Betrayal on was larger than the stage that they got for Moulin Rouge somehow. So that was kind of off-putting and weird. But again, it like, I think they did more than the best that they could have done. And
no, these aren't issues that I have. Yeah, with the talent or the skill of the level of skill levels of the people involved. It's just more what the story requires, and there are so many super timely songs in the Broadway version.
Yeah. Well,
or was it you, Kristen, that was saying that most of them are oldies? And
Kristen,
in the movie, they're mostly old. Yeah.
There was just something really odd about seeing, like, Parisian society people singing so fresh and so clean.
That was one of my favorites, actually.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was so funny.
I'm very jealous that you guys got to go see this, and I want to go see it, but I also feel like, I don't know, when they announced that they were doing it, I was kind of like, but we already did it. So I mean, I remember seeing the movie and so many people being like, oh, I can't believe that this isn't a Broadway show already. And it's like, well, I don't know. I feel like taking it from the movie to the stage is kind of undoing it a little bit. And then
it was.
What I love about this is so specific. And I just feel like if I saw the show, I don't think I'd like it very much because I would be expecting the movie and I'm not going to get it.
Well, and there's some of the things that they added that I think work really well. Like, for instance, in Satine's big number, they added Diamonds Are Forever and Single Ladies.
Oh my God. Yeah, those were both amazing.
And that, I think, really aided the song, and that went really well. And then they added a new number that was Bad Romance and Rolling in the Deep and Toxic.
Yeah.
And that one was really good.
I have this feeling that if it had gone the other way, we'd feel differently. Like if it was a Broadway show first, and 100%. Then it went to a movie, I think we'd be like, oh my God, the movie just like only builds on what the musical did. But because we have had the movie for going on 20 years, I agree. It's a little bit of a downgrade, despite what a competent production it was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How is the choreography?
Pretty good.
Good.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It's Sonia Taye, but it wasn't I mean, it's ensemble choreography. It wasn't like, I mean, there were 2 sword swallowers, so that was cool.
Oh.
I also did wonder if they cut some of the choreography because it looked like Karen Olivo had been injured because she had a lot of tape on her shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they do that thing where they make several arbitrary changes that I didn't really feel all that strongly about, but like Ninny isn't a villain in this one.
Yeah.
She like has a rivalry with Satine, but she's not the one who outs them, and she like actually protects them in the end.
And she's like in love with the Argentinian who's not a narcoleptic.
What?
Yeah, he's not.
Yeah.
And because they're the ones that sing Bad Romance, Ninny and the Argentinian, so I like that. But and the like show that they're doing is not even it's not even 1/10 of what they do.
Yeah.
In the movie, it's like a sailor and like I don't even remember.
It was something like that. It wasn't as good as the courtesan and the penniless sitar player.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm so glad that I got to see it, and I actually really do recommend it to people. And I mean, there's a moment where Karen Olivo sings Firework, and it's like there's not a dry eye in the house in a way that you'd be surprised. And the Green Fairy's in it, but it's Satine.
Yeah.
She's the Green Fairy.
Well, it makes sense in it because it's when he's getting drunk on absinthe for the first time, but he's already in love with Satine.
They move it well into the second act.
Her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like trying to get to her, and so he's imagining her as the Green Fairy.
And she does come down from the ceiling, and she does have wings.
It's very good. By far my biggest issue with it, and I understand that you have to play to the rafters. I get it. And I get that, like, maybe not a lot of people going to, like, Broadway at a matinee on a Saturday know what tuberculosis was. But every time she had, like, an attack of tuberculosis, she, like, leaned over and grabbed her side like she had a running cramp.
Well, she doubled over. It was abrupt.
It really put me out every time she did it, and I was like, that's not where you get tuberculosis. It was fine, but it was really, I was like, work on your space work a little.
Mm-hmm. This almost feels like, so I saw the Phantom of the Opera movie, and then I saw Phantom of the Opera on Broadway, and I did not like the Broadway version at all.
Does it feel like this?
Yeah, because, I mean, the movie obviously was so much larger, but I remember when that chandelier came down in the theater, I was like, what the shit is this? I was like, this is some garbage. I was prepared for someone to lose their fucking heads. And I think because I went with Diana Davis, me and Diana were the only, and these 2 ladies from London, we were the only 4 people, and we were in orchestra seating, the only 4 people in our whole area that did not give a standing ovation at the end.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we were all very put out, because the ladies from London, they were like, this is ridiculous, because when we saw it in London, that chandelier came down and we were all very afraid. And a lot of the songs were sped up, and the Devo, it was weird, and everyone just seemed very exhausted, because I mean, I know Phantom's been on Broadway for like 75 million years, so I know everyone, is tired of doing it, but it just wasn't.
Well, there's something about the show, the Broadway show, that just wasn't capable of competing with the movie.
Right.
Because ultimately, the Broadway show, we're watching 6 women do the can-can.
Mm-hmm.
Like the actual can-can dance, in the way that, like, the movie version is, like, a feverish orgy of, like, color and sound and, like, so, again...
And bloomers.
Everyone was excellent, and it was a very good production, but I don't think it does anything that the movie didn't already do and do better. So
I agree. Yeah.
That's sort of my, if you like it and if you want it, I think it'll play well for tourists and stuff like that.
I think people should see it.
Yeah.
Even if you love the movie, you should still see it if you can. But it just go in knowing.
If I find myself in New York anytime while it's playing, I'm going to go see it. That is, without a shadow of a doubt. I'm just not going to, like, plan a trip specifically to go see that, I don't think. especially after hearing y'all's review.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, I think that suffices. Hopefully this was a fun 200th episode.
Yeah, for sure. And
Yay!
Moulin Rouge is currently on HBO.
Oh.
Right now. That's how I was watching it.
Me too.
Cool.
Well, happy 200th anniversary or episode anniversary, guys.
And happy to you too, because you've been there since the moment one.
You have been there since day one.
Have you listened to every episode?
Every episode.
Even if you haven't watched the thing that we talked about? Oh my god.
Yes. Oh yeah,
Thanks,
no, I'm still listening to the newest Claws one. Like I just keep picking that up. But yeah, no, I listened to everyone, and I've never seen an episode of Claws.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Can you follow it at all?
No, not at all. I forget when it's on, but I
mean, like, you follow the episode. Can you
when
follow
we talk about it? Can you follow us? Okay.
Yeah, I know what's going on.
Like the plot makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense.
How much are you loving this season of Riverdale?
I was just about to say, I listened to your guys' episode from Patreon today. I was laughing all the way to work.
Yay.
Because and I just wanted to agree with you when Betty goes, "No, bitch, it's your sister." Like, yes, it's so good. But no, this season is so good, and I'm having a great time. Also, can we just also discuss the fact that why is Jason not decomposing?
Well, he was embalmed
because Cheryl was sewing him back together.
Oh, I missed that part because I was like, "Is he a dummy? Is that like?"
No,
is
it was when the rat came out of his stomach and she started sewing him back together.
Okay, so I full on was still thinking that he was some sort of like dummy that they've made. But
no, he's been embalmed, which keeps you relatively fresh for like a while.
Mm-hmm.
Ew.
Yeah.
And it's no longer the actor. That is a prop at this point. It was the actor for a hot minute.
Yeah, so, I was...
I fucking hope so. That's such extensive makeup.
I know, what a waste just to lay there and not do anything. As a makeup artist, I would be pissed if someone was like, okay, make him look like a dummy.
So, yeah, I'm like, we're over the moon. We're just like...
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. Well...
all right.
Rachel, do you want followers? Do you want to tell people where to find you?
Sure. Yeah. You can find me on Instagram at Raynut, and I am trying to be better at Twitter, and I'm also Raynut on Twitter as well.
RAENUTT?
Yep. Or if you're in Minnesota, you want to come buy stuff, I'm at Burnsville Center. You can come buy stuff from me, and I'll do your makeup. So
there you go. She works at the Mac store. Go see her if you live in Minnesota. All right. Well, as always, you can follow us on Twitter @SoI'mWatching, Instagram @SoI'mWatchingTheShow. We are also on Facebook and Tumblr, So I'm Watching the Show. I suspect quite a few things are going to make their way onto the Spotify playlist.
Because
So I'm Watching the Show. The theme
I made it to this whole recording with that.
The whole thing, yeah, just over the back of it. And then other than that, you can just rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. And that's it for us. Bye.
Bye.